Hey, good morning. It's funny. I was gonna do this later in the day. I was like, you know what? The Lord woke me up early this morning, so that way I can actually finally get this message out. I've been having problems with my storage on my phone, and it wouldn't allow me to save some of those videos that I pre-recorded. So here we are doing it again. But welcome YouTube. My name is DeAndre from This Is For You, and today I don't even want to make a long introduction. I want to give you David, part two of Though I Walk Through the Valley, or if some of you know, Sitting with the Lord. So, like I said, I'm just going to jump right into it. Go ahead, like, subscribe, share, especially share, not just for me, but just share because, there's a lot of Christians out here that need to hear the true, authentic word of God. Not that you can't find that anywhere else, but I'm going to look at the camera. Not that you can't find that anywhere else, but you can always be rest assured that this is a channel that will express that. So, without further ado, it's funny actually. The Lord was telling me about how David really sat with him, and of course, we all know David as a man after God's own heart. Um, but it's funny. The Lord was just telling me um, David is a perfect person to show as an example of sitting with the Lord. Um, David was the type, and it doesn't explicitly say it, but it implies it throughout First Samuel, that David was undervalued. And I think as far as a lot of people, some people refer to them as chosen ones. I just refer to it as your calling. When you are facing your calling, oftentimes you don't even want to do it. But oftentimes, again, we find time and time again that people will undervalue you or not value you at all in the midst of you answering God's calling. And David was one of those people. And actually, I'm going to read, it's going to be a long verse in the Bible here. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7 through 13. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen these. Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all of your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest. But behold, he is keeping the sheep. I'm going to stop right there. So we're probably about verse 11. So you can see that, Jesse really just undervalued David. He didn't even bring him to see if he was chosen by God because he's just a sheep herder. And as you read the Old Testament, right, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You'll see that sheep herders are the main people that are actually shepherding people, right? And so it's almost like that was a prerequisite back then to shepherding people was you had to learn how to shepherd sheep. Um, but all they saw was a simple sheep herder, right? So it's just funny the value there. It's already like in the very beginning of this reading. You can see the value they placed on David. And Samuel said to Jesse, moving on, send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So, this actually reminds me, side note, on the story of Joseph. You know, Jacob had about, correct me if I'm wrong, like 17 sons. He had a whole lot. And amongst those was his favorite Joseph. And it makes me actually think about how even Joseph's brothers were jealous just like David's brothers were jealous. I just want to say real quick. Um, so the reason why God anointed David was because he had peace and position. It never said that David disliked his job as a sheep herder. He may have disliked being undervalued, but he did not like his. He did not dislike his job being a sheep herder. So, what's the moral? What's the point here? David just showed his peace and position. I'm going to do my job the best of my ability. And as you'll see in the later verses that I point out, he even acknowledges the Lord in guiding him through being a proper shepherd, right? And guided him in his belief, not necessarily in himself, but what the Lord had put on him. And that's something that we need to realize when we have our calling, is that we need to believe the Lord who believes in us, that he chose us to carry out his will in the way that he calls us to, right? But I don't want to jump too ahead. So, um, and I'm not necessarily going through these points in order. I'm just showing you different verses to display these points, but they're nothing in particular. Okay. So then we jump to chapter 17 with David and Goliath. So David is now, well, I'll just read it. So 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 17. And Jesse said to David his son, take for your brothers an ephah and this parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers. Also take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See if your brothers are well, and bring some token from them. So I want you to understand context here. Right now, the Israelites are fighting the Philistines. And amongst the Philistines, I'm not sure actually if it points it out yet, I'll be honest. But pretty much um, all of David's brothers are going to war. Now, again, he's a sheep herder. So he's kind of just tasked with, you know, tending to the sheep. But now that his brothers are going to war, his father has ordered them to bring them some resources, some food, some water, things that they need so that they can keep fighting, right? And I'm going to jump again. We're going to jump to verse 28 in chapter 17. So that's what he's sent to do, right? Um, and actually, we're going to go to 26 because I'm going to give you context before I read it. So Goliath comes out to battle and people are afraid. And Goliath basically says, okay, let's do a one-on-one battle, and whoever wins this battle, wins, basically. Excuse me. So Goliath says, who will face me? Who will dare challenge me? And nobody would stand up to Goliath because he was huge. He was a giant back then. The only person that really was saying that they would challenge him is David. And I'm going to go to verse 26. I don't want to get out of sorry, I want to get out of the way. Verse 26 says, and David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way, so shall it be done to the man who kills him. And so he basically is saying, and you'll see it actually. I'm gonna wrap it up here. Now Eliah and his eldest brother heard to the when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger, oh, sorry, the way I marked it, I said Eliab, but it's Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left these few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Was it not but a word? And he turned away from him toward another, and spoke in the same way. And the people answered him again as before. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. I'm going to stop there. So we often try to say, We try to often list practical, logical things when it comes to our calling. Like, oh, I don't have a lot of the provision, I don't have a lot of the resources. And it's like, no. What you have to understand is if God is calling you to something, He will provide you the resources. Now, again, I don't want to jump ahead, but you'll see what David is about to say to prove that he is actually ready for this fight. Why? Because he sat with the Lord, he experienced peace and position, power and growth, and you're going to see the prosperity and faith soon. But right now, we're going to look at the power and growth. So, um, but David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or bear and took a lamb or bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. So, as you see, David had the resources, he had the preparation, he already had the skills needed to conquer Goliath. And we know the story, right? It's one of the most famous stories like ever, right? He took his slingshot and he did it by unconventional means. Whoa. Thank you, Holy Spirit. So it wasn't like he had to fight him hand to hand combat because yes, maybe in that way he could have lost. Goliath was way bigger than him, but he used an unconventional means to the end. And that's how the Lord works. That's why the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? Because the Lord doesn't bring practicality in how we think. It's in how he thinks. And so sometimes when this task looks impossible or very daunting to us, it's because we try to think about it like in a practical way, where God can prepare you in such a way that's so unique that you will be prepared and be victorious. Because not only do you have peace and position, not only do you experience power and growth, but you'll see when you trust him and when he delivers you in the face of coming to your calling, you will have prosperity and faith. And not even like when you reach your calling, even when you're going throughout your journey, right? And I'll just wrap the prosperity up in faith saying, David ended up being king of Israel. And David ended up getting so much notoriety amongst the people and just even in God that Saul ended up being jealous. And so to make a long story short, Saul basically sought David, sought to, take David's life. And in the means, he died by the sword in which he believed in. And that's the last thing I'm going to say. Sitting with God and realizing your calling and going throughout your journey, you're going to experience people, even people that are closest to you, your own brothers, your own mother, your own father. It could literally be everybody against you, right? And there has to be some discerning in that, right? But it can literally be everybody against you because they're jealous, because they already seen what God has prepared for you and they want it. And it's crazy because a lot of stories in the Bible is themed off of jealousy. And so you will get backlash out of people being jealous of you, right? But that's why it's so important to sit with God. That's why it's so important to look at stories like David, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that all we see is Jesus. Because even Jesus, when he preached to the crowds, it always talked about how either the crowd loved what he said or they hated what he said. But he always looked to the Lord. He demonstrated always looking to the Lord. He knew his mission, and so he did it. He did not worry about who was with him and who was against him. Even Jesus said, who is my mother? Who is my father? So these are just important. This is really just a motivating word today and a motivating message, because a lot of us think that we're not qualified. But I promise if we sit with the Lord and we even look at all the opportunities he's giving us, providing us so that when we face that big mountain of an obstacle, we'll be prepared. We'll be ready. we'll be able to grab that lion and bear by the beard and strike it to kill it, so that we can stand victorious in the end, not for us, but for the glory of the Lord. Pray with me. Father, I just want to pray for this day and thank you for this day. Thank you for all that you do for us, not just by what you do, but for who you are. I ask that people that watch this receive this message and just allow it to reach whoever needs to hear it. Allow us to trust in you and to our calling, and even amongst the journey in which we will be in. Because it's not going to always be perfect, sunshine and rainbows, but through the thickness of the storm and through the heavy rain, that we still see and focus on you, so that we may walk with you, so that we may be with you, so that we may dwell in you. Let us experience peace and position. And while we're in that peace, let us experience power and growth, so that we may have prosperity and faith, so that we may have an ultimate relationship with you, not just for our sakes, but for other people as well. So, Lord, as you bless us, we ask that you bless others around us. Give us the courage and the strength to speak your word, because time is growing shorter and shorter each and every day. And I just pray that even for me, I know I don't have a lot of the resources I would like for this channel, that I put the message out regardless. And even if it's just one person, I know that I'm blessed and that I'm honored to spread your word and your truth. So allow this channel to keep going, to be consistent, and allow people that see it to be truly blessed, so they may bless their community. That being said, Father, I thank you, I love you, and I praise you. And we thank you, we love you, and we praise you as a community. Search our heart for any iniquity and any sin and some darkness that's harboring within us, Father. Let your light be true and show truth, so that it may set us free. Please protect us as we go about our day. And I thank you, I love you, and I praise you. In your heavenly name I pray. Amen. All right, guys. I know this is almost 20 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to be more concise, but I just need to make sure that I'm getting the full message out of there. So that's David part 2. And so stay tuned. I might be doing more shorts just so I can practice being more concise, but more videos are going to be coming out. I'm going to try to do once a week. It seems like that's the good pattern. So we'll go from there. But anyways, you guys take care. I need to go to work, but I'm glad that I was able to do this morning. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this is for you.